to the Best Half Show, the show all about the biggest idea in the world, and that is that the second half of your life can be 10 times better than your first, and still the number one standing podcast in the world. And why is we have a standing podcast?
Well, the reason is sitting is the new cancer. So we're hoping that you are listening to this, walking, exercising. You could be in your car as well. But really, we think standing is really important, and we're proud to be the number one standing podcast on the internet.
That's right. And today, so you may be wondering, how do you 10x your life? Well, we actually did a little bit of work. There's a great book that was just written about how to 10x your life, and it's a really provocative idea in that actually 10xing your life, or 10xing really any big project that you do, can be just as easier or even easier than 2xing. Yeah,
this is a huge topic, and what I did is I was doing the research for this. Is that, the author is Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He's done a lot of work on this. He wrote a book with Dan Sullivan, and it's called 10X. 10X is easier than 2Xing your life. And when I was doing the research on this, Mark, I started thinking about the companies that I had the privilege to work with and clients and how they did it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they probably didn't even realize they're actually using these techniques. So super powerful. So as we talk about the framework, I'm going to give some examples of real life examples I've been involved with 10xing businesses and 10xing your life.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I first ran into this. This is 2001, and I went to a conference. It was actually a pretty interesting conference done by like the Canadian consulate. Probably the only useful thing the Canadian government has ever done for startups, I think. And and they had a bunch of Canadian entrepreneurs who'd done really well. And that was really the theme. The theme was really think big, because 10x is bigger than 2x. And honestly, it really did change my mentality. Because at the time I just started Eloqua. I was in a startup. I was thinking, I'd just like to not die. I'd like to make some modest living, whatever. Yeah. But then with seeing these stories and how they did it, and so, you know what? The only difference between 10x and 2x is choosing the right market, having that mindset in the first place. So you're right. A number of things that were in the book that I got galvanized when I watched these stories.
So just as a disclaimer, some of you are going to say, I can't relate to 10xing my life. I can't relate to this topic. I would argue that you need to 10x your life. We're in a time in history, it was very turbulent, very scary. And my belief is that within 6 years, there might not be a middle class. There's going to be rich and poor. So right now, you're deciding which part of the category do you want to be in. But the old rules do not work anymore. So if you have an old model of what used to work 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's completely changed. When the government changed your trajectory about printing, trillions of dollars they don't have, when AI came out 18 months ago, literally the entire world has changed. So you need to 10x your life if you want to be successful and prosper in the future.
Right. Yeah. So why don't we go through the framework, right? So there's 3 things that Dr. Hardy talked about with Ben Sullivan, in terms of, Dan Sullivan, in terms of how to do this, right? So the first aspect is you have to change your mindset.
This is a huge one.
And that sort of ties to, when I went to that conference, right? The mindset needs to change, right? So, how do you view yourself, right? If you just view yourself with respect to what you used to be, then you're going to be limiting. You're sort of limiting yourself, right? So I think that's the first thing. The second aspect is filtering out noise, right? So removing the distractions. And again, this is possible when you have a foot firmly in the future, right? Where you are kind of almost living a little bit in the future. It's a lot easier to filter out the noise and distractions. And the third thing is set very ambitious goals. So now that you have this sort of big vision, a huge problem that you want to tackle, how do you set goals in order to, if I hit these goals, then I'm going to be able to hit the much larger goal. So that, and we're going to talk about those 3 things and maybe some examples from our own life and things that we know in order to accomplish them.
Good. So the first one is the most important concept to understand. For those of you that are not watching this on YouTube, I suggest this is the episode to watch on YouTube. We're going to have 3 circles on the screen. The first circle is your past. So the way that we interpret our past right now is based on our present. So right now, I think about my past, and maybe I justify behaviors or I justify certain things. So if I was overweight, I'd say, well, my parents were overweight, or this is the diet. I'm Ukrainian. This is what Ukrainians used to do. So I could justify a lot of my actions based on that. That's a typical model. What we're proposing on a 10x model is very, very different. The 10x model goes like this. You look at your future self. So let's say your future self, that you envision yourself to be incredibly fit, incredibly healthy. So you envision, like, literally you have to see yourself, you have to feel yourself in that incredibly fit state. And maybe you want to be wealthy, whatever wealthy means to you. But you literally have to embody, you have to really visualize yourself in that. I'm just going to give you an example of that. A client of mine called Montecito Property Company, Chip Conk, which is one of my mentors and heroes in life, just a great friend. When we got engaged together, he said, Roman, I want you to fly to a place called Montecito, California, and you're going to hang out with me and my family for about 3 days. Don't worry, it's going to be fun. We'll stay at the Four Seasons Hotel. And I said, okay, I don't understand why we're doing this, because none of your properties are anywhere near Montecito, California. They're in Arizona, in Florida, in Georgia, in Arizona. But okay, I'll go with you. And what he did for 3 days was took me around Montecito. And we see like all these beautiful houses, like Oprah's house, and this incredible world that I'd never experienced. And he said, the reason we called our company, this is a new startup called Montecito, is we want to live here. Our future selves, we see ourselves living here in Montecito. And to do that, we've got to make $100 million of profit. And I was like, wow. So they literally took me, Mark, into the future and had me live it for 3 days at the Four Seasons, the one that the Thai beanie, the Beanie Baby guy built. They literally had me living the future, okay? So by doing that, then what we did, the next time we met, they're like, oh, you're going to fly to San Diego next, and you're going to spend a day with your hero. I'm like, who's that? They said, well, remember you said Brian Tracy's your hero? I said, yeah, he's my hero. He's going to spend a whole day with us privately to set our goals. And what we did for a whole day was we took their future goal of that we had to do $1 billion in revenue to make $100 million in profit, and they tied it down to our individual goals. And we spent an entire day. So what we did is we took our present self going into the future, and that was my first time experiencing this whole 10X and going from your future to your present. If you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like because I think this applies for a person and applies for a business as well. Because you're talking Montecito, which is a business. I mean, I really think about one of my CEO coaches, Cameron Harold, really transformed the way that I was able to hire executives. And the most important thing was for me to have one foot firmly in the future. So one of the things he had me do was to create my org chart that was 2 years out and have it on my desk.
Wow.
So I was living it. And that org chart had 3 times as many people as I had. At the time I had 50 people, but this is the chart for 150 people of a business that was considerably bigger.
And it's on your desk.
It's on my desk, and I was seeing it absolutely every day.
Wow.
And the reason why this is transformative, because the old way that I was hiring executives, and I had my batting average wasn't that high. I had a lot of great candidates who politely would listen to what I wanted to do and not be willing to work for my company, right? And it was really starting to hurt me. And the reason why is because we're mired in the shit of today, right?
Yes.
We're constantly thinking about all the problems that we have, both business and personal, and it's like weighing us down. And then when we communicate that to people, they're being weighed down.
Yes.
And that's just not sexy in any way. By having the org chart out there, by having this amazing vision for what you want to accomplish and why you have to go somewhere to create your vision. You can't do that at home. You can't do that on a plane. You've got to do that in somewhere inspiring, because you have to be able to see beyond yourself. You're communicating the future. That is inherently exciting. It's like, this is what I'm creating. Is this something you want to be a part of? The org chart is really important, because it's like, this is the role that you're going to have, right? What you're going to be building. Once they're excited, then you can say, well, here's what we have today. It's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Right? But you're going to create this amazing thing. And if you're excited about that, I want you to go through the recruiting process with me. And that recruiting process for me was really arduous. Like, it took 2 weeks, multiple meetings. So for a VP that has already another job, this was really, really big commitment. But I needed to get them grabbed first by, a really exciting vision of the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a big part of the 10X, right? Whether you're creating a business or whether you're imagining what you're going to look like or what your relationships are going to look like, you might as well think really big.
Yeah. So I want to because this topic is so important. Your mindset is everything. So I want to share another story about mindset. So when I met Lou Pearlman from the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, he brought me to his office in Orlando, and on his walls, he'd spent 5 years studying and researching all the music industry and who'd made all the money. And he had from the Beatles to all the boys bands. And he explained to me why the boys bands make all the money because it's all about the merchandise. 13-year-old girls buy all the t-shirts and hats and posters, etc. But he showed me a very, very clear vision of where he was going. Now, his band at the time were a bunch of guys that never recorded anything. They worked at Taco Bell and they came out of like Disneyland. Like they'd never done anything. But he showed me this vision of, I'm going to create the best-selling band of all time. And he had all the charts. He showed me it was my first meeting with Lou Pearlman was just like, holy shit, this guy has a very clear plan of how he's going to reach that future. And I'll give you just one other example. The first time I met Manpreet Chadha, he flew from India and met me, and we spent the day together, and he said, I'm going to build a smart city. I'm going to elevate a life that no one has right now in India. We're literally going to build this smart city. We're going to change the trajectory of people's lives in India. And he had such a clear vision of it. I mean, he completely had me believing, oh my God, this can be done. And that's how he recruited me to India. But to get to 10x your life, you have to have that vision. Now, does it have to be for business? No, it could be your body. You could have pictures like a vision board. You could have pictures of like the body you want to have. You could have pictures of whatever life you want and just look at them every day. But you've got to put yourself in that future self to change your mindset of today. Because then you're not going to make the poor decisions today. Because once you live in your future self, you're going, would I be eating Doritos today? Would I be watching like 2 hours of Netflix every night? Like, no, like my future self would never do that. Hey, it's Roman Bodnerchuk from The Best Half Show. I'd love you to join me on a 75-day complete transformation. I want you to join me because I'm going to do it with you. It's 75 days where I believe together we can create and become the best of our possible selves. Imagine in 75 days, we have the best bodies of our lives. Imagine in 75 days, we look the best we've ever done. I really believe we can do it. So I look forward to you joining me on the 75-day transformation.
Yeah, that's right. Because you have a couple of different choices. For example, on the body thing, you could put a picture of your old self and say, I don't want to look like that anymore.
Right.
But the better way to do it is, the new self. So for example, if you had a whole bunch of befores and afters of like normal people, how they transform their body.
Yeah.
That is a much more effective technique.
Absolutely.
Because if they can do it, that means that I think that I can do it
as
well. So that's a great example.
And I think we got to understand as human beings, it's like the 4-minute mile, Roger Bannister. No one ever thought they could run the 4-minute mile. Like in human history, no one ever done it. All of a sudden this guy does it. And like within a month, like 14 other people do it. It's like, if another human has done this, you can do it. And if God put this idea in your brain, God gave you the capability to do it. God doesn't just tease you. God doesn't put these ideas and dreams in your mind if he didn't give you the ability to do it. You have everything you can. You already have all the natural ability to do it. If you have the idea, if it's legitimately your dream, you can achieve it, but you've got to live in that future self. And then you've got to go, if I live in this future self, what would I be doing today? What habits would I have? What would my morning habits be like? And that's how we transform our mindset.
Yeah. And then one thing I'd add to this, I think it's really important, is really you need to have the why. There needs to be a sense of purpose attached to the vision. If you just, for example, want to have a fit body, why? Why is it important to you? What will happen if you don't achieve it?
Right.
And the same thing for business. There needs to be a really a sense, sense of purpose. Like for, I don't know, I think about some big companies like Microsoft, for example. Their vision was a computer on every desk. They didn't produce computers.
Right.
They produced software. But the idea here is that, if we make amazing software and even we inspire competitors to do that, then the whole world is going to change. Everybody's going to have access to computing. I think tying whatever that vision is to why, the sense of purpose of why it's so important. Why it's important? Because I want to have real impact on the world. I want to be remembered after I'm gone, right? I want to have, for me, for example, I imagine my 75th birthday party and having tons of people there and me being in great shape with all my friends and family and whatnot. And that is like a life well lived, right? And so that's kind of the image in my mind that kind of keeps me going, right?
Well, I remember the image you showed me a couple months ago. I had never seen it before, but you as this young bodybuilder. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's unbelievable. It was such a cool picture. But I think that picture helped me understand that, because you're like, hey, I'm going to transform myself. I'm going back there. And then I'm like, okay, I want to join you on that challenge. And we're doing it. So I think that visual, one thing I learned from Steve Jobs is we think in pictures. And that's why the whole OS is about pictures. Right. It's not DOS code, right? So we think in pictures. So maybe a great way for somebody could do it today, you can literally cut out pictures from a magazine, from a book, put it on a vision board, because words are good, but pictures are 10 times more powerful. And have those pictures and see them every day.
Yeah.
So whether it's on your bathroom mirror in your bedroom, but don't be shy about this. Like, you have to really be clear of what your vision is. Like Chip Conk and their family was very clear when they flew me to Montecito and we spent 3 days, like, this is where we're gonna live. Like, they had a very futuristic idea. This is the plan. And then here's how we're getting, we broke it down. And then what they did was they were able to attract the right people because they had a big vision. And it's really important. But if you don't have a vision, it's really hard to attract the right people, right? Even partner. It's hard to attract the right partner if they don't see a vision. And that's what I see right now. And when you look at all these people, why is everyone single? No one's, because most people don't have a vision. They have no purpose in life. So like, who wants to date somebody with no purpose? I mean, I don't. I don't want to date with somebody with no purpose, no vision for your life. Like, what's your day? And they're like, oh, I'm going to do brunch today. Like, that's your purpose? Like you want people with a vision, with a dream, with aspiration. We all want that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, you give the dating scenario, it's also true in families. People complain, oh, my kids are just on screens all day long and they waste all this time, whatever. Well, part of it is they're not inspired, right? Like, does your family have a vision? Do your children have a sense of what they can accomplish and what you can do together as a family? And most families don't, right? They don't have a powerful vision. And I think that's one of the reasons why things go astray.
Mark, can I share a story with you? I haven't told you this. This happened this week. So I talked to my daughter. Kate is 19, and I'm incredibly proud of her. So my daughter's 19, and she's working as an interior designer for a 57-year-old, incredibly well-known interior design company. They do incredible projects in South Beach, in Miami, and New York. And they work on like $40, $50 million projects. And she said, Dad, do you remember when we went to South Beach? I said, yeah. She said, it's this building beside Nikki Beach Club. And I'm like, Continuum? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's the nicest building ever.
I know that building.
She said, Dad, do you remember that building? I said, I know that building. I said, I know that building. She goes, Dad, I'm working on a $40 million penthouse condo. I'm working on the interior design team for that. And she goes, I stay there. When I'm working on it, I'm like, oh my gosh. So sometimes maybe that trip that we took our children to when they're, and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, you start connecting the dots and how we inspired our children to do that. So in terms of inspiration, I'm taking her and my son we're going to go to New York City because I'm like, okay, they need more inspiration. Like, we're going to go next level. But you're right, but this is about future self. Like, this is about taking our kids to the future, showing a vision of this is possible for you. You could do anything you want.
Yeah, that's huge. So speaking of daughters, so yeah, my daughter who just accepted to go to UBC for engineering. So excited. This is a couple days ago.
Incredible.
Yeah, and she got in everywhere she applied.
Of course.
And so, but we had a project together where I used it in a way to help build a sense of purpose and vision for her. And the project was pick a university. So she got in everywhere, and it was like really hard for her to decide between these different places because it's like a lot of apples and oranges. So she's like, how do I make a decision? Well, it's like, let's just start from first principles. Why go to a university at all? Right. What do we do there? Like, what's the point? Is it just to get a job?
Yeah.
Is it to learn? Is it to meet a mate?
Yeah.
That's actually the best reason to go to university, I think. Yeah. And so we started right from first principles, and it's like, well, the whole purpose of going to university is to help us have a more successful life. Well, what does it mean to have a successful life? And so we broke that down right from first principles. Well, it means a few things. I mean, one is that we're happy. Second, and what drives that? And so a big thing that we kind of got to is what I just called status. It's probably not the right thing, but the idea here is that if you're accomplishing things, if you're building unique skills and you've got sort of unique skills that are valuable in the marketplace, which is what university should be driving, then you're a valuable person and people are going to want to do things for you. That's actually my definition of status, right? People want to do things for you. They bring you opportunities.
Right.
They want to hang out with you. They invite you to parties, right? Yes. That sort of thing. And I think she really resonated with that, right? So the reason why we go to university is because we are going to build unique skills. We're going to become that are valuable in the marketplace. We're going to become more valuable people so that we can achieve status and be happier.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about that is I think that she was able to establish a vision for what she can become.
Yes.
And I hope that will give her the strength, because engineering is not easy.
No.
You know, there's not a lot of women that do it, right?
Yeah.
It's like 1 out of 5,
Yeah.
you know, are women in a class. It's going to be hard. She's going to be doing a lot of studying when other people are partying and
Yeah.
whatnot. And what I'm hoping is that she's going to come back to first principles and say, this is why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I'm going to have a more successful life. And this is where my university thing is going to tie to what's going to have a better life.
She's going to love it. I had an incredible intern that became a good friend, and I think she's graduating this year, or she just graduated this year from UBC engineering. So I'll have to connect them because, you know, it'll be helpful. But when you talked about status and, you know, the way you define status, it made me think of something. Yeah. So last summer I went to Montauk. Montauk's like my favorite place to hang out in the Hamptons. And there's like this one club, and my friend Danny, he's always very connected, goes to best. He goes, Roman, go to this place. So I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to get into this place. Like, this is like the place in Montauk. So we were lucky. We get into the club, and I'm like, this is like something out of a movie. It was like out of a movie. But guess what happens when you're in like the #1 club in the most incredible place in Montauk in the summer? Mark, you don't actually pay for anything because every company wants to be there and wants to sponsor stuff. So I'm like, they give you everything. I'm like, wow, this is how these people live. They don't actually pay for anything. You're getting champagne. You're getting all this stuff.
I guess that's the way to get wealthy.
Yeah, but that's status, right? Because when you get to that level, they don't actually pay for anything. It's very, very, so I just thought of that when you told me the status story.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good story.
Very cool.
So let's go to the second thing. So we talk about mindset, right? And the second aspect, right, is to focus. So remove all the distractions.
It's the hard part
in your life, for sure, especially these days. So let's talk about that.
So this is the most difficult part for everyone. I think everyone can relate to this part. We are, and when I say we, I'm talking about like Roman Bodnarchuk, I'm talking about Mark Organ, all of us, we're insanely distracted. When I look at my screen time, I'm actually disgusted. I'm very proud of myself in many areas of my life, but when I look at my screen time, I'm disgusted. And one of the things I've had to do is delete a bunch of apps from my phone, like TikTok, and I'm deleting, I think Facebook is gone now. I think Instagram is now off the phone because I'm like, why am I spending so much time on this doom scrolling thing? So focus is important because we all say we don't have enough time. That's not true. Look at your screen time. Yeah. Like if you're like most people, like 5-6 hours of wasted time. If we look at the time that we waste on nonsense, so we need to take that time, that unfocused nonsense, and put it into the, you know, the 80-20, the 20% important. So this is really important.
Yeah, for sure. I've had to do a few things too. Like one of the things that I noticed when I started my last company, Influitive, is that I was still doing a lot of trading. So before I started the company, I was trying to make money by not quite day trading. It was almost kind of week trading. But a lot of these stocks were quite volatile and you had to watch it. And I was also in options and stuff like that. And I found even after I started my company, I should be really focused on the company. I was still spending like an hour a day analyzing stocks and stuff. And eventually I realized this is not going to work. I'm going to fail at both. And so I had to sell a bunch of stocks. Other ones I had to go in, I need to be in things that are less volatile. I had to stop being in options so that I wouldn't have to look at it. I can look at it once every 3 months instead of, you know, looking at it every day as an example. And there's probably a bunch of that, like, you know, your workouts. There's probably ways, like, for example, you do F45. I do it too. Do it all the time. Yeah. But I think that's what it is you really just don't have to think, right? That's what.
And you don't have your phone there. So what I like about F45 is my phone is away. Yeah. I have 45 minutes and it's just like I go in. There's no time to think about anything else. Like I just do that and I get out. Yeah. If I was in a regular gym, I was like taking notes on my phone. I get distracted, you get text message. It would be like a 2-hour workout, but it's not a 2-hour workout. It's probably back to 45 minutes, but I just wasted all this time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, that's why I like it. You just don't have to think.
Right.
I know my class starts at 6:15. I can walk there, and then you're done. And you're done. You've got that again. I don't think it's the thing to do every single day.
No,
but I think it's But I think it's an example of how to simplify our life and, you know, remove distractions.
Yeah.
I took a couple of examples. I mean, you've probably seen the movie Oppenheimer, right?
Yes, great example.
It's a great example.
Great example.
They did it in New Mexico. Why? I mean, it just happens that Oppenheimer had a connection in New Mexico. The big thing about New Mexico was there's nothing else there.
Right.
So, you know, built a little town there, and
people live there. Like that's all they could do. There's nothing. There's no friends. There's no family to hang out with. They're there for a purpose. Yeah. And kind of like what Elon did, you know, in Texas. So I want to give you back to again, my mentor, Chip Conk. What he did was he said, Roman, go open an office in Florida. So I was like, okay, because they had no staff yet. They had no assistants. They had nobody. So I opened an office. And he's like, we're only going to hire people from out of town, out of state, out of country. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, we're only going to hire people from out of state, out of town. We don't want anyone locally. I'm like, why? He says, when people work for us, we're going to own them because they're going to live and breathe our work, our purpose. We don't want them distracted on, oh, I got to go to this birthday party or this family. No. And it totally works. So I literally then had to explain to my wife, which didn't go too well, but I said, hey, we had a baby. Kate was 6 weeks old. I said, guess what? We're moving to Florida. She said, what are you talking about? In July. And she's like, this is crazy, but Chip was right. And the reason we went from startup to $1 billion in revenue, of actual revenue, closed revenue in 12 months, was because everyone we brought in was from another city, another state. Everyone was completely focused on work. The only friendships we had were with each other. It's military does the same thing. Like you think you join the military, like you're not just sitting around at home.
Yeah.
Like you're off. Like companies that have real missions, that's how they do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to make this part relatable to people.
This is hard.
But it's true. I mean, one of the reasons why, startups really do better when you're young, like my first company, Eloqua, was, I was the oldest person, one of the oldest people in the company. I was 25.
Yeah.
And so nobody had children.
Yes, you're right.
And I think for everybody, especially after the recession of 2001, like it was do or die. Like we had to make the company work.
Yeah.
And we really didn't have a lot of other good options. And so, people slept under their desks and, worked. Yeah, they were galvanized by the mission.
And their friendships were each other.
We did have a lot of friendships with each other.
And what's interesting about those days, because our companies were the same together, some of our employees married each other, but the only friendships they had were with each other, and they're still tight today.
Yeah,
like 25 years later, some of them are still best friends. Like I remember at Tammy and Paul Tashima's house, they had Kathy Kim, like my first project manager. Like they're also friends. Like it's amazing because it's through the struggle, it's the greatest memories. It's the struggle. And that's the problem with this whole virtual work, everybody working at home. No one has any friendships. No one has relationships anymore. It's so hollow now. It sucks.
It is true. I mean, I struggle with the whole remote thing, right? And I mean, it is here to stay. People want to work from home, and there's advantages to hiring people wherever they are. I got to tell you though, like I'm thinking about my next startup now. I'm pretty sure I want to start another, rocket ship software company in the next couple of years. Yeah.
I would really, it's like SpaceX 2. Is that what you're
yeah. It's not going to be a true rocket ship, but the virtual rocket ship. Because honestly, while I enjoy doing with coaching and whatnot, there's nothing like having a big mission, right? There's nothing like something that is going to change the world. I miss it. Yeah. I miss the influence I think that I used to have when I was doing something really big, right? I just know it's going to be a ton of work. But
there's another part to this, Mark. Humans change most when they're in a group environment. So there's a lot of science to back this. This is why like Alcoholics Anonymous works together. When you go to rehab centers, you're not by yourself. It's group. If you want to change a behavior, if you want to remove a bad habit or you want to install a new habit, do it as a team. And that's like we're doing the 75-day challenge because when you challenge me, I'm like, that's good. But if I'm still hanging out if my friends are all like fat and lazy and they're not working out, that's not gonna be fun for me. So I recruited my friends and I'm like, guess what, guys? We're doing the 75-day challenge because of your inspiration.
Thank you.
And like we wear the ring because we're like, everyone's in this together. And it's so much more fun when you're doing it together.
Sure. And the physical proximity is important. That's what I struggle with. Like, I want to create another company that is in an office. I like being in office with other people that are in an office.
Yeah, me too.
And not where everyone has their own little thing. Like, I like it where everybody is together. We're all seeing each other.
Yes.
Working hard and whatnot. So I don't know. I mean, that's really retrograde because a lot of people are starting fully remote companies right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, are working. I just can't imagine it working as well as everybody being together.
Not only do I think it's not going to work long term, I think it's great for a short term company that maybe gets sold, but it's easy to pull those people away. It's easy to recruit because they have no relationship. See, the reason most people stay, it's not because the money they're getting paid. It's because the friendships. They don't want to leave their friends. You look at people who have been with the company for 10 years, 15 years, it's their friendships. They're not leaving their friends behind. That's why they're not leaving. So do you want a company that grows for like a decade or two? You need that glue, and that glue is not done virtually. You don't build that relationship over Zoom. That does not work.
I'm Mark Organ. I'm co-host of The Best Half Show, all about how to make the second half of your life 10 times better than your first. I've been a successful software as a service company CEO. I've created companies like Eloqua and Influitive. And today I help category defining software company CEOs generate massive success in their businesses. You can find out more about me at categoryknots.com. And if you qualify, you get a free 45-minute session with me. I'll generate a lot of value for you right in that session. And if we hit it off, maybe you'll be a client. Yeah, and to the point of removing distractions, it's a lot easier to remove distractions if everyone's working together. One thing interesting on this point, in my last company, Influitive, is that we pair programmed, which I thought was a crazy idea. Toronto is actually a center for pair programming. It's a crazy idea, but it really works. And you basically have one computer, two people. And so you think, how can that possibly work? You're going to get half the productivity. You have only one person programming. The other person is watching and correcting errors and other things. And the two sometimes, solve problems together. But the reason is it's actually way more productive for a number of reasons. First of all, you're actually working a solid 8 hours a day. Okay. So that's because you have two people working together. Secondly, you have two people working and solving a problem together at the same time. And thirdly, you don't have errors going out there into the world because you're fixing mistakes while they're happening. So you actually end up getting, even though you have only one person coding, you actually end up being much more productive.
Yes.
And again, I think it's because you've got two people that are working well together.
Look, it's no different than us. We have very different talents. We're very different, but you're a 10X person. I'm a 10X person. You take two 10X humans and that energy in the room and you create 100X. Yeah. You can't do that over Zoom. It's not the same thing. I found that even when WeWork was starting and I was working in WeWork offices, there's an energy in even if I was not working directly with these people, but there's an energy that you can't explain that's so powerful. So, and again, that does not happen when you're sitting alone with your dog at home. It's not the same.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's maybe the big point here is that you need to change your state. So first you have a different mindset, but you have to change your state. You have to change where you are. I know when I wrote my book, I couldn't do it at home or work.
Right.
I went to literally a new coffee shop every week. I went to all the Jimmy's coffees in Toronto. Yeah. And that was the way that I didn't have the internet running. And that was the way that I got the book done in 100 days.
It's a great example. So the 75-day challenge, which again, you inspired, I went to Mexico. I was by myself for 7 days. By myself. Yeah. And it's all I was having fun. I was going to the beach, I'd swim, but I'm thinking, I'm just thinking, I'm digesting, I'm reading, I'm thinking, I'm digesting, I'm creating the program. You need to pull yourself away from the distractions to create real work. And I think the one thing I've learned now in focus is pick the one thing every day, just pick the one thing, the most important, valuable thing. And I've actually been saying it to you like in a journal at night, like what's my one thing I've got to do tomorrow? And just get it done first thing in the morning. And if we just get the one big thing every day, then you can go screw around and whatever you have to do. But if you just get your one big thing every day, it's so powerful. And let's talk about the one thing, in your experience.
Well, one thing, and I think that ties to leveraging actions, right? So the third part of the model is that you have to create goals that are going to attach to this big vision, right? And of course, with goals, you have to have actions that go and drive that.
So it doesn't have to be 10 actions. It could just literally just be one every day. Consistency.
I mean, where that actually comes from was there was a management consultant, and this was back in I think it's the 1920s or something. And it was basically a forebear of McKinsey, something like that, right? And he charged kind of outrageous fees. Anyway, so John Rockefeller comes to him and asks him, what can you do for me? And he says, I can do something. I can give you a lesson in 15 minutes that will make you absolutely millions of dollars. He's like, wow, that's amazing. What do you charge for that? It's like, you can pay me whatever you think it's worth. Pretty interesting. And what this management consultant didn't go to study the company or give advice on revenue and profit and market share and all this kind of stuff that management consultants really do. He just says, write down your most important goal that you need to accomplish the night before and put it in a piece of paper and keep it in your pocket and just keep taking it out of your pocket until you get it done.
Yeah.
And he got a check for a lot of money.
Wow.
as a
I
result.
imagine, Mark, what if we did that as our screensaver? Like, I don't think it's that hard to change a screensaver, but imagine because we look at our phone 315 times a day. So imagine every time you look at your phone, you had the one goal you had to do that day. I wonder if that would change your behavior. I might test that.
Maybe. Yeah, trust that and see.
But I love that. One thing that Montecito did, which I believe I would attribute, one thing that they did, how we went from startup to $1 billion faster than OpenAI, by the way, which is pretty remarkable. That's a software company. We're selling real estate. We're actually selling hard good real estate. Was every morning at 8:30, we had a physical meeting. You had to be in the boardroom. There was no excuse. There was no, I'm in the hospital. There's no, I'm in a different time zone. It didn't matter. 8:30, and we went around the room. The first question was, what did you do yesterday to help us achieve our goal? What's the one thing that you did yesterday? And it couldn't be, I went to a meeting, I sent an email. No, like a concrete example. What did you do yesterday to help us hit our goal? And then the last thing you had to do was, before you left the meeting, is what's the one thing you'll do today that will help us hit our goal? So it was intense because like maybe you lived an hour away. Like you had to like get up early, you had to think about, be there on time. You could never come late. There's no being late. What's the one thing I did yesterday to help hit the goal? And then what am I gonna do today? That insane focus of everyone meeting in that physical room. That's the only thing, that was the agenda of the meeting. Just the one thing you did every day. Holy shit, it's powerful.
Yeah, no, daily meetings I did that in my company too. Even when I had 160 people, we actually had a daily meeting every day, 11:51 Eastern, which is 8:51 Pacific. And it was almost 5 o'clock in England. Inspired really by that. So originally John Rockefeller did that too at Standard Oil. They started with 3 people, same thing. When I had 3 people at a daily meeting and even 160 people, you can't have 160 people all saying what they did to achieve the goal. You got to do other things at the time, but there's a lot of power in having high tempo in meetings. And I think it's something people can leverage in their personal life too. Right?
So to summarize this one, let's go to the one big thing every day.
Well, let's go to the third aspect of the model, right? Which is in goal setting.
Yes.
Because you can have a big vision and you can remove distractions, but how are you going to go achieve the goals? You mentioned a little bit about Montecito.
Yeah.
An example here that I really like is the invention of the Prius, which I think it's a great story, which actually talks about kind of all of these things.
Let's talk about that.
So basically, the CEO of Toyota said, we need something new. We need something new and big and different. And so he sent his top product manager to Los Angeles. So that's the first thing, is new location. So not in Japan. I had to go over there, brought a couple of his people to go and figure out what's next. So that's the only thing, is the only thing we started with is we need to create a new product that is going to generate at least 50% of our revenues in a decade. That's never been done before. So that's kind of where they started. And they basically, through their research, said, okay, well, what we would have to do in order to build a new product that does this well is it needs to go 0 to 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour in like less than 5 seconds. We've got to store 3 suitcases in a trunk, and it needs to have at least double the fuel economy, if not triple the fuel economy of a car today. And so the engineers said, that's impossible. Like, it literally can't be done. It's like, well, how could we do it? Like, in theory, how could we do it? It says, well, we certainly can't use this engine. It's just not going to work. It break the laws of physics. Well, what happens if we change the engine? What if we don't have an internal combustion engine? And that's actually where it all started. The engineers were so excited about creating such a car that 500 patents later, that's really where the electric car first started. I mean, not a fully electric car, but that's where it first started. So I think it's, again, big vision, remove distractions.
Yes.
But then the goal setting of like, how are we going to achieve this?
Yes.
Well, these are all the things that need to be done. Again, 500 patents, 500 massive innovations needed to be created in order to go and hit that objective. So like, once you have the big thing, you've got to break it down.
Yeah, and I think once you have the big goal, so now you've set yourself in the future, you know exactly what the goal is. You're ready to remove 80% distractions, 80% of the nonsense, and now you're at execution. So what I've learned in execution, you have to get the right people, because maybe you could stumble and fumble for decades and maybe you'll figure it out, but most likely you won't, you'll give up. But if you go out and find the right people, the experts you need. So I think about when Lou Pearlman was starting the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, he went out and he's like, okay, who can help me create the best-selling band of all time? Oh, Donna and Johnny Wright. They did New Kids on the Block. And he started going out, who has done this before, brought people in and said, here's the vision, here's what I want to do. When I think about Chip Conk from Montecito, he found a guy that sold, thousands of pre-sale condos, like, hey, I think that guy can figure it out. He's never done this in the US, but I think he can do it. When I think about Manpreet Chadha from Wave, he wanted to build a smart city, and he hired IBM to do the technology, a company called Acon to do the infrastructure. And then he brought a different guy from outside of India, go, hey, build the sales team.
All right, well, that sounds nice. How do you get those people?
So I think if you have a big vision, you have that people buy into and they align with it because they got to be in the same vibration, you can recruit those people. Mr. Chadha, Manpreet Chadha, he spent 3 years trying to get a meeting with me. I had zero interest in India. I did not want to go to India. I had zero interest until he finally got on a plane, came and recruited me. And then he basically said to me, he goes, Roman, do you want to be, it's great you're selling all these condos in Toronto and this is fantastic. But he goes, we're going to change the lives of people in this country. Like this is important. Yeah. He got me.
So I'm going to give you a counterpoint because I actually don't think that works very well.
Okay.
I actually don't think that works very well. The reason why, I mean, maybe because that guy is a superstar, or the guy who runs NSYNC, whatever, is a superstar, can attract other star power. But a lot of people here, a lot of people listening are not there yet. And the challenge with saying I'm only going to go after the best is that even if you manage to recruit the very best, they actually may not necessarily see, what you're doing as a vehicle for them to achieve their own 10x. So it could be, but so here's what, I'm going
to agree with you because all these 3 clients were already rich.
Exactly.
So my 3 clients were already rich. They already knew what success was. They knew they had to pay for the talent to save time.
And that's where you said, you know what? I believe in this guy. I'm going to sign on to the vision.
Yes.
You're right. You do that a lot. But there's a hack, right? There's a hack. And so, and the hack is you need to know at least what the very best looks like. And if you know what the very best looks like, maybe you can get an up and coming version of the same thing. So I did this when I needed to hire a new VP of engineering, and you would think I would have a lot of experience in this, but I didn't because I always founded a company with somebody that's great in engineering. But I had the person I had was ready to step down. It was 5 years in, and I started recruiting, and I was struggling. All these candidates kind of sounded the same. I'm not really a technologist by background. So it wasn't an easy hire for me to make. And I was really struggling with these interviews until finally, I said, this sucks. I gotta find a way to make a change here. And so I just asked around, who is the best damn VP of engineering in this country? I want to know what the very best looks like. And then I had a couple people said, you got to talk to Jean-Michel Lemieux. I said, who's that? He's like, well, he just came from Australia. He was running engineering for Atlassian. He's now at Shopify. I'm like, all right, that sounds great. Again, the best. The probability of me being able to recruit Jean-Michel is like close to 0, but might as well try, right? Mm-hmm. And so I watched a bunch of videos that he made on the internet about code extensibility, which I don't know anything about and frankly isn't that exciting to me, but it was really exciting to him.
Right.
So I sent Jean-Michel a note through LinkedIn saying, hey, I'd love to come talk to you about code extensibility. He's like, sure, I could talk about that all day long. It's my favorite thing. So I went with my outgoing head of engineering. We went to Ottawa and actually did try to recruit him in his office, which is actually pretty funny. And he laughed like, oh, you're coming with your little butterfly net to come and catch me. It's pretty funny. But that said, he still spent 2 hours with me and he explained the role in absolute detail. Like, here's what I do every day, every week, every month. This is how I recruit people. This is like in incredible detail. And all I had to do from that point on was just essentially kind of clone him. So at that point, my interviews went way better because I'm like, who looks like this guy? Who has the same insight and knowledge and experience as Jean-Michel? And I did hire someone amazing in Rafe Barbaros. And I knew within 10 minutes, my guy. It's like, that's my guy. Okay. Now he's not Jean-Michel. He's an up and coming Jean-Michel, but it ended up being even better because now, and I told him, says, here's your model. This is what inspired me. This is why I'm hiring you. I think you could be the best damn VP of engineering in Canada or more. And he ended up being more. He ended up running product for me and even ran customer success for me. He's now a big time VC in Toronto, but he got a vision for what he could accomplish, which made him even more excited. It wasn't even what we're trying to do as a company. It was what he could do for himself. So I think that's one of the things you can't do in terms of hiring people is at least know what greatness looks like and the different flavors of greatness. Because you have different kinds of great people in every role. So if you understand what you need and you say, well, these are the types of great people that I can hire, these are my models, it's easier to find someone. And I love the up and comers. I love young people who haven't accomplished everything yet. They have a lot more work to do in their career.
Hi, it's Roman Bodnarchuk from the Best Half Show. Hey, just want to introduce myself. Some of you have been watching our podcast. Some of you don't know, what I did before this. So, age 14, bought my first piece of real estate. It was life-changing. I've literally bought and sold and rented hundreds of properties since then. It's been my passion. It's been incredibly fun. And I've done this in 5 countries around the world. Then I started my first company, age 30. We raised over $1 million in venture capital, became the 11th fastest growing company in the country, the 13th fastest growing company, incredibly successful. Well, what I'm most proud of is helping 5 different startups reach over $1 billion in sales. I have not taken on a client in over a decade, no clients. I've not worked with anyone on a consulting basis, but because of our new show, The Best Half Show, I've had a lot of people ask me for help. Here's what I've learned. No one actually takes your advice until they pay for it. I used to charge $25,000 a day for strategy, $25,000 a day for consulting. I don't have that much time, but I am willing to help you on a 15-minute call, scale your business, scale your life, whatever you want to really transform. And if you're serious, you're going to do it. So I look forward to meeting you. And again, it's Roman Bodnarchuk, and I look forward to meeting you and helping you. I think you're 100% right. And I remember over the years we've talked about, you always like to like young, up-and-coming people in their career. So I do have an example where I was able to recruit 3 absolute superstars. I'm 30 years old. Our company's like a year old, N5R, and 3 world-class people, and how I did it. Yeah. So I found out that this outdoor ad company had just been acquired. And when these big companies get acquired, a lot of them, they get these exit packages. They pay them out for like a year. So I found out the top, and I didn't know these people, these 3 executives. So I went to the CEO. To the CFO, and he's running $100 million business. He just gets an exit package because they got acquired, and his name's Real Ranger. And I said, Real, I'm a young guy, like I'm 20 years younger than you. I don't know how to build a $100 million business like you do, but I want you to work for me. He's like, why would I work for you? I said, look, for the next year, you've got this 1-year severance, so you've got some security. I'll pay you half. I'll pay you half of what that company needs to pay you. Okay, so there was some money. But the other half, I'll give you stock and stock options. And you are going to be able to build something incredible, okay? No bureaucracy, no big company bullshit. He's like, okay, Roman, I'll take the position for, there's 2 other people you have to hire or else I'm not coming. He goes, you have to bring in another person, which is going to be your head of sales. I'm like, okay, who's that going to be? It's going to be John. John is like the greatest salesperson. I'm like, why would John work for us? He goes, you give him the same package that you're offering me, he'll do it. So I go talk to John. And I said, John, I'll give you half the money, the rest in stock. This guy, within weeks, is like, okay, now we have meetings with Hershey's and Pepsi's and Johnson & Johnson. Like the brands that would take me a decade to get into, these are his friends. Then they said, but Roman, there's one more person you have to bring on the team. You've got to bring in our marketing person. I'm like, really? We'll offer the same package. Give her half of what she got paid before, stock options. So the bottom line is I recruited a world-class CFO, world-class head of sales, world-class marketing person for half of what I would have to pay. And they were able to build an incredible team. So you're right. It can be done even when you're 30 and you're starting a company. It can be done.
Yeah, no, and again, that's why the compelling vision is so important,
right?
And to think big, and
yeah,
and to have an environment where people can be, without distraction. Again, that's why I like offices where people can interact with each other. I think for companies, especially, what's most attractive is other people, if they can work with other people that they really like.
And you learn so much by hiring great people. And if in case John Baird is watching or Real Ranger is watching, I love you guys and I'm grateful for everything that you did. You guys were extraordinary. And I think that sometimes people that have worked in big companies, they want that startup experience. Yeah. There's a lot of people in their 40s or 50s that are now being downsized. Like Meta just laid off 21,000 people. That's 21,000 people. Like companies are laying off like crazy. Some of those people, they don't want to do their own startup, but they'll join your startup. They will join your startup. So I think you can recruit superstars.
Yeah. So let's talk again. Let's wrap up with goal setting.
Great.
So one of the disciplines that I think is really kind of revolutionizing the startup world around goal setting is a technique called OKRs, or objectives and key results. And I'm a huge fan of this. I think
let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's really great. And there's a a couple of key differences between it and a lot of the goal setting systems that have come before. So typically the way that goals are being set, whether you set a goal for yourself or you're setting goals for other people, is you go and say, well, what did I do? What did we do last year? Let's see if we can do 10% better. Right.
That's
And
typically
then
how companies work. Yeah.
for sure, 10% better, even with yourself. Let me see
Yeah.
if I can lift 10% more weight than I did last year.
Right. Or can I lose 10
whatever.
pounds?
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's kind of incremental.
Yes.
Right. And the challenge, especially if you've got employees, you're like, I think I think we can do 10% better than last year.
Right.
And then the employee has all these reasons for why that can't happen.
Yes.
Right. Well, the economy is only growing 2% and like blah, 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 blah. And you end up sort of fighting, and then you kind of maybe agree on 3% or 4% increase or whatnot, which is actually inherently dishonest. You have the manager that's setting a goal that he may not think is possible. You have the employee that's sandbagging and saying, here's why it's not possible. And then you argue and you have something in the middle. That sucks. Okay. And that's the way that most goals are set up. OKRs are really different. It actually comes originally out of Google. And the idea is to be able to actually set much more ambitious goals that are inherently really galvanizing and exciting. So it first starts with what the objectives are, and the objectives are written in such a way that are very exciting, right? And there's a why attached to it, right? So I'm going to get very fit in order to inspire my children, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Now it's an objective.
That's a great one. Yeah.
That's great. And then what are the key results that I need to see in order to go and measure, measure like that success in fitness? Well, I need to have, I'm going to have a body fat of this. I'm going to be able to have this in my VO2 max. I'm going to be able to do this in my bench press. But we set those in such a way, which is where the constraints are removed. Like, what happens if I remove the constraints that are going to prevent me from achieving such a goal? To think bigger. And you don't punish yourself, or you don't punish the employee for not achieving it. You basically say, what if this is possible? Like, how? Or you go to the employee and say, what do you think would be incredible? That would just be such an incredibly inspiring goal, for yourself to hit, assuming that we take all this garbage out of the way. And you're not going to get punished if we miss it. We're just using this as an exercise, as a way for us to think bigger. And what ends up happening is, more often than not, you actually do end up achieving more than you thought possible. Like at Google, they say 67%. If you achieve 67% of these kind of supporting goals, that's actually considered quite good. And that's typically what it is that they do. But their goals are stretch. So if you achieve 67% of something stretch, it's actually pretty awesome.
Yes.
So that's why I love OKRs, because it puts, you and the employee, or whatever, the manager employee, on the same side of the table, thinking big together.
Yeah.
And then when, these supporting goals are hit, what ends up happening is it rolls up to the top goal. So if my top goal is I'm going to be super fit, well, what are my key objectives? I'm going to get this in terms of my strength, this in terms of my diet, blah, blah, blah. Those all have, key results that you want to hit. When you hit those, then you end up hitting the big one at the top.
I think it's really important to tie the compensation to the employee and the company. They have to be aligned. And that's one thing Montecito did really well. Anyone that was on the team that was able to help the company achieve their goals, they hit their financial goals as well. So I think that alliance is important. But let's talk about some practical things we can do today. Today, I'm going on a boat ride with my 14-year-old son. And Reed doesn't know it yet, but we're going to be setting goals for the first time with him. My son Carter has told me he wants this car. He doesn't have a driver's license yet, but he's already determined which car he wants to buy, when he wants to buy it. And I think goal setting is super important. In my research for this, I went through all of my Dan Sullivan notes. I did strategic coach for a number of years. And I found there was some notes in my goals in 2017. And I described this house on this lot, on this ravine in the Kingsway in Toronto that I want to live in. And I read that as I'm sitting in the ravine, in the backyard, in the house, overlooking the Humber River. Like, literally, I had written down, it was in 2017, Mark, and I described it exactly where I'm like, holy shit. And this happened to me many times. In 1991, I wrote like pages of, it was a Tony Robbins. And then maybe 15 years later, I find my 1991 binder journal, and I was able to cross off like 90% of those things. Like it's so powerful, but you've got to write them down. And you got to write them in a piece of, not on your phone. It's got to be like in a nice journal that you're actually going to keep, because in 5 or 10 years, you're going to pull it out and you're going to go, holy shit, I actually achieved those things. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. There is a process called a vivid vision that's that I've used before, and you can find it on the internet. And typically you want to go somewhere inspiring. You're right. You write it down in longhand, where you literally not literally, you figuratively transport yourself into the future and what your future company is going to be like, or what your life is going to be like. So for example, what is your sales department like? What are your sales reps like? What kind of results do they achieve? What kind of people are they? What kind of marketing are you doing? What's your product look like? What's even your physical office look like? Like, I know one of the things we did is say, well, what does, our office is going to be in Lonely Planet as like a place to visit in Toronto, which actually ended up happening. It was kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
But I think the same thing for your personal life, as you've said, if you can really close your eyes and imagine it, and then you can apply your goals against those things.
That's right. Yeah. So let's wrap up. So today we talked about how to 10x your life. In summary, you've got to put yourself in your future self. So think about 5 or 10 years from now. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20 years from now. What's your dream life? What will you look like? Who will your friends be? What will your bank account look like? Where will you be living? What's your dream life? And then think about when you really, and we're talking about write this stuff down, when you put yourself in that place, bring it down to today. How would I have to live today? What daily habits would I need today to have the dream life? Would I be wasting hours a day on social media? Would I be spending hours a day on Netflix? Would I be eating this crappy food? Probably not. So once you understand your future self, think about your daily habits. And then every day, if you could just take the one thing, be laser focused on the one task that's going to help you to get that goal, and start surrounding yourself with friends and family that are going to help you enable that best life. Because that's the key. Understanding where you want to go, taking it down to the daily habits, and surrounding yourself with the right people that are going to help you make that 10x life.
Sounds awesome.
All right, now let's go enjoy the long weekend, our first long weekend of summer.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us. You're a 1%er for being here. We'd love to hear your journey. We'd love to hear about your goals. We'd love to hear about how today's inspired you. Leave us a comment, and we can't wait to get back to you. Thank you so much.